Welcome to the PM Collective podcast, The Art of Property Management. 2025 is turning out to be huge. We're hosting 200 coffee and conversation events all around Australia, creating connections like never before. Plus, we've launched the PMC Learning Lab to make your property management training enjoyable, fresh and progressive. If you're in property management, this is your place. Settle in, relax and enjoy today's episode.
So today we have Samantha Priddis in the office to talk about the BDM process and particularly the renovation process. Now, Sam, have you done a podcast before?
I think we did one early on when I very first started.
Do you remember what we did the topic on?
I think it was a handover process, like going from myself to the property manager. I think that's what we spoke about, but it was a while ago now.
It was a while ago. Excellent. Okay, so for those that don't know, Sam works at SoCo as an amazing BDM. I would say that you, and I'm saying it for you because you're not going to say this, I would say that you're probably one of the highest performing BDMs that I'm aware of in WA. You do an amazing job. Do you want to give a little bit of a brief, background for everyone to know a little bit more about you, about your history, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't even actually know if you know this, Ash, but I kind of fell into real estate. So like any good story, it involves a messy breakup at the time, like it does. And my mum was working for a woman that was a sales agent, and she was just cleaning her house and stuff like that. And she was like, look, I'm working with this sales rep. He's full on, he's intense, he's a high achiever, he needs an assistant. Mum was like, I think Samantha could do that. So I met with him, did my licence, and that's how I sort of got started in the industry, straight onto the sales side, lots and lots of weekend work, and absolutely loved it, and just sort of progressed from there. I've done every aspect of real estate, property management, sales admin, reception, all of the above, and finally landing a gig as BDM with you, which has just been amazing. This is the right role for me. It's got the good combination of the selling side of it and obviously all the legislation with property management and stuff like that. So been in the industry now for, coming up 12 years. So it's been a long ride, and, that's how it sort of started. Wasn't doing anything like this prior, but, this is definitely where I fit.
And it's funny, I didn't know all that, and the reason why I didn't know all that is because I don't really read resumes.
I don't think I actually gave you one.
No, you might not have. I don't even know how it all happened. But I definitely employ people based on, conversations and interactions, and always have, always done, going with gut. So I didn't know that, and great. I'm glad that you had that history. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more as a refresher about the handover process.
Yes.
But I also want to talk a little bit about the renovation work that you are doing, because it's a big part of your job at the moment, and I think it can be a bit of a sensitive issue as well. So we're going to talk today about renovations in properties. And when I talk about renovations, we're meaning significant stuff, where your boundaries might, be when it comes to the work. At what point do you pay one contractor to do the whole job as opposed to trying to save the owner money on separate contractors, just things like that. So before we get to that process, we just want to talk a little bit about the handover and just how you manage new business when a owner says, yep, I want to go with you.
Okay, so my response to this question when we did our first podcast is probably going to be different to now, Ash, because what I've learnt being so busy is that I am actually really client focused. So depending on those clients' needs will depend what my handover to the property manager looks like. But if I was to generalise it, firstly what I do is break it down into steps for the landlord so that they're aware at what point I will stay with them and at what point I will then pass them on to the property manager. So obviously all of the documentation prep is a given. So the management authority making sure that they understand all of those points in there and that sort of jazz. Obviously conducting a inspection of the house, making sure everything's okay there, doing a bit of a video, flagging any potential maintenance or issues that I might see. And from there it's, basically waiting till the property is ready. So if that's a settlement or if it's a file pickup, and then moving forward from there. The whole way through that process, I'm mentioning little things to the property manager so she's aware she's got something coming up, and I'm speaking with the owner, mentioning the property manager's name so they're familiar with each other already. And by the time I get to the point where I'm officially handing it over, I like to do a big welcome email or final sort of email to the landlord, copy in the property manager, and then I just go over all of the notes. Might need a new aircon. This needs doing. This is, blah, 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 whatever the situation might be, so that the property manager's got everything in writing, nothing's been missed, the landlord knows it all, and hopefully from there it just provides a nice smooth transition for the two of them. That's it generally. But I do have some property managers that are control freaks and like to come in really early on in the piece. So
names mentioned, but I know who they are.
So for those clients, it's a different process for them. So it really does. It just depends on where this property is going to end up and what property manager as to how that handover sort of looks. But paperwork, marketing, communication, noting any maintenance or potential issues, making sure all that's documented and all of that communication is passed on to the property manager is basically it in a nutshell.
So what I like about what you said, and something that we probably don't talk about, is that it sounds like you are you have a process that suits the property manager at the receiving end, as opposed to you saying, this is our process, this is how we do it, and a property manager has to suck it up. I like that there is some allowance for what the property manager prefers.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, I've got to work with these property managers every day. But, they're busy and they're time poor, and they have the way that they deal with stuff, and if this landlord is going to end up with this property manager, it's best that that property, that landlord knows exactly what that PM is like from the get-go. And I also like to just constantly remind the client that I'm not the PM, because quite often, you hear where people go, oh, I thought you were going to be the property manager. It's like, well, no, this is my role and this is where we'll separate, sort of thing. So I think, constantly mentioning the property manager and how they like to do things just makes that process a little bit easier. And they've got some PMs that just don't care and just wait till I dump it in their lap, and they hit the ground running with it, and they're fine with the email. So,
yeah, excellent. We do work quite geographically based, but how important is matching personalities between owners and property managers? Does that come in?
It does. And if it's a situation where the property is going to end up with this person regardless, it's really a matter of educating them both and trying to buffer the situation to make sure that they gel. Do you know what I mean? So whether that's managing expectations for the property manager as to how much money this client's got to spend on the house.
Which is generally $500, not $5,000.
Yeah. Or whether it's, trying to educate the owner about the minimum requirements with the property and, all of that sort of stuff. If I know how someone's going to react, then I'll try and sort of filter that before it gets to the PM. And full disclosure, I am very direct with the landlords and so are the property managers, and the property managers and I have very frank and open conversations. So there's nothing that's not unsaid between us, and make sure that we're on the same page. It's just a matter of how we get there so that the client has the best experience going from me to them and hasn't got any issues and is confident once their property is with the PM.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Property Me, Australia's #1 property management software. Enough said. Check them out at propertyme.com.au.
So one of the big problems I see, I think that we do it very well, but I do see this in other offices, is where you've got a BDM who I refer to be like a puppy dog.
Yep.
And the new client rings up and the BDM is all over them, making sure like their calls are responded within like 2 minutes and really meeting the demands of this client. And then what happens is it goes to the property manager where you don't get that same interaction because it's not necessary, number one, but it can definitely be a divide between BDMs and them maybe sugarcoating stuff to get the business, because at the end of the day, that's your job to get the business, but then it completely falling short with the property managers. So you, I know, are very honest with clients, but how do you manage sort of those expectations, like with what you've told the owner to do and the property manager?
Yeah, good question. So with me, I always mention to the landlords, if the property is coming over vacant, there's a lot of communication between the PM and the landlord at that stage. But if this is a property that's coming over with a tenant already in it, there's not a lot for that property manager to really do. So what I do in those cases is really outline to the landlord that the ideal situation when you've got a property manager, an investment property, is that you don't hear from your property manager. So if you're not hearing from us, that's great. She's still doing all of that work in the background. She's making sure, the rent's paid and the property's maintained and all that sort of jazz. But it is literally that's what you want. So it's really trying to set that level of expectation from the get-go. And, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to get a great tenant in, we're going to do the first week inspection, you're going to get sent all of the reports, everything's going to be great, and then you're probably not going to hear from us. You're just going to see the money in your account and your statements at the end of each month, and they're like, great, that's what I want. So, I do try and make that really clear, because one of the biggest complaints from landlords when we do pick up clients from other agencies is there hasn't been any communication, but that's generally surrounding issues. But I do like to get that cleared up right at the get-go. So everything's ticking along nicely, she's not going to call just to say hi if she's got, no time. So, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to throw you under the bus with a bit of a tricky question, but it's
beautiful.
I think it comes up, and I think people will resonate with this question. You bring on a new management, and you think, you know what, it's absolutely fine as is. It can be rented out. It's not perfect. It's not like renovated, but it's perfectly fine. Passed on to the property manager, and a property manager goes, why are the floors not getting replaced? Why is the painting not getting done? I don't know if it comes up a lot, but how would you balance that situation where the property manager thinks this property needs to be renovated and has such a high expectation of it, where a BDM's gone, the property is absolutely fine, doesn't need to be done? So
the issue, that only becomes an issue if the communication between the BDM, the landlord, and the property manager hasn't been there in the get-go, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, how much this client has just purchased his property for or whatever. As a BDM, one of the first questions you should be asking your clients is, tell me what your framework is. What's your goal with this property? What are we doing with it? Is this a set and forget? Is this something you want to leave to your children? Is this something you're planning to develop? So all of those questions should be answered first and foremost, so you know what they're doing with this property, what their goals are, and then from there you'll work out, okay, well, we're only going to do essential repairs because in 2 years' time we're going to knock it down. Or we actually want to renovate this whole property, but we want to do it over a 5-year period and want to manage tenancies in between. So all of that information you should have, and you should be able to pass that on to the property manager so that those sorts of things don't come up, I think is probably the best response to that.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Let's get into renovations because I know that you are very busy doing renovations at the moment. There's different types of renovating. Doing a new paint and a re-carpet is one thing. And when I'm talking about renovations, I'm referring to some significant work. Like, what's been sort of the biggest one that you've done lately in terms of dollar value?
So the highest dollar value one was $50,000, and that was because there was aircon, roller doors and a bucket load of stuff. The one that I'm currently working on at the moment, we have a very tight budget of 20 with a 5 in the background as for just in case. So that has been very challenging. The only bonus to this particular renovation job is most of the kitchen is done, but it's bathrooms, laundries, flooring, paint, retic and landscape and lighting and
oh, whoa,
all
for
of
20.
All of that. So that's been
Jesus.
quite challenging. But, there's a big difference between a renovation and a facelift. And I don't know if all of the property managers will agree with what I'm going to say, but in my head, I think the top 5 a property manager should absolutely be capable of doing within her portfolio. So paint, flooring, blinds, clean, garden, tidy up. I just think that is easy enough to coordinate, and that should fall comfortably within a property manager's role.
And you should have those trades already on your books
Correct.
to easily know who to arrange.
Yeah. But when you've got a client that decides they want to convert the laundry into that second bathroom, something like that I feel shouldn't fall onto the property manager because there's a lot of work involved with that, especially if you are working in tight budgets and you want to try and get as much work done for the landlord for the best possible price and work within all the timelines and all of that sort of jazz. So I think at that point it's good for the property managers to be able to have someone where they can go, okay, well, if you deal with Samantha for now, once that's all up and running, then she'll give you back to us or whatever the situation may be, because I don't think that is fair for a PM.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's been so busy.
Yeah, I mean, and just to disclose, so we've got Sam set up as a where she's got a separate entity so that she can handle these things as well. So having someone that you can use to actually have that as part of their job role and as a separate sort of side thing as well to action that, I think is really helpful, because I agree. I think there has to be a limit. My concerns are there has to be a limit of dollar value. I think the minute that you maybe need to get the council involved, a builder involved, for me, like I think as a property manager, that's overstepping what our experience really is. So I do agree with that. But the other thing is that at what point, and I don't know if you've got any boundaries around this, but at what point would you say, okay, we're going to give this job to, ABC maintenance works who can do all the works, and they're just going to give us one bill and then it's all done, and that bill might be $50,000. Or if you were to get your separate plumber, electrician, tiler, vanity maid, etc., you could definitely save the client money by doing that. But is that our role, your role? Is there a boundary?
Yeah, no, there's no boundary.
No. Nice answer. I like that.
Short answer to that, Ash. So, look, if a property manager was doing it, I would say absolutely yes, and they should be able to go to that one-stop shop and go, quote, there's the price, get it done. For me, because I do it separately, and I've always been client-focused, it's what they want. So I can get the quote from ABC Maintenance, who's going to list everything, can have it as one big, beautiful, shiny price and make my job bucket load easier. But at the end of the day, the clients want a couple of different quotes. They want a couple of options. They need me to be flexible. I need them to be flexible. We need to prepare for variables and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, it's their house, it's their money, and it's their decision. And all I'm there to do is help guide them through the process and offer, obviously my thoughts and opinions on what they can or what they could and could not do. But at the end of the day, it's up to them. And if they want 2 quotes from 2 separate tilers, then that's what they want. So I'll just get it done.
Yeah, I think that's...
But sometimes I feel like I probably should need boundaries, but...
We'll work them out later.
Yeah.
So, I think that's really, it's a good reminder, and I think a lot of people forget that it is the owner's property. They get to make the decision and their budget, and the best you can do is give them what they're requesting and leave it with them. And then you as a property manager or BDM or business owner have the choice as to, yes, we want them as a client, or no, we don't.
Yeah.
And
most of the time, as soon as you give the clients the choice, they do say, well, what do you think? In your experience, what have you seen? Or, and I'll go, well, this, and this. And they'll go, great, let's go with that. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like they're just going to not listen to me and paint the walls pink or not put any retic in on a massive 800 square metre section of lawn or whatever it may be. So they do take on board everything that we say, and because I've got so much experience and I've got case studies and I can show them what I've done in the past, they feel really confident and they feel very comfortable and open and honest with where they want to be and what they want to do and what they like, and it sort of just works itself out.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. Because you do such a high volume, you generally roughly know how much it's going to cost to paint a house and do flooring. And so you're already having those discussions before the quotes probably already come in.
Yeah, so budget's a really tough topic to have with a client. And it's probably at this point that I like to do a Zoom meeting if I haven't already done one, because I find that when you start to talk serious numbers, it's better to do it face-to-face. And I feel like you kind of get invited into someone's home when you do a Zoom meeting. So I'm very, very upfront with them and just go, what are we working with? Just tell me how much you've absolutely got so that I can get all of the quotes for you, and then we can work out what we can actually fit in within your budget. And, of course, I'll offer up, I've recently painted a house that cost me $5,500 or whatever it may be. So they've got some guidance there. But, yeah, budget's a tough one.
I think if you know how much budget the client's got, it is easy. Like, I love nothing more than a client saying, my budget's $5,000. What's the best way to spend that much money? And then you have control as to what they spend, because there's no point a client going and spending $5,000 on something that you don't think is going to give any value.
That's right.
You'd rather have control of that.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've sort of learned over time is there's little tricks that you can do. For example, if the client has a really tight budget but the property needs painting, sometimes I would consider just getting the walls done and not the ceilings.
Yeah.
Or just getting the doors and door frames done and saving some money in that. Just because the house needs painting, you could potentially go from a $9,000 paint job down to a $5,000 paint job just by getting the walls done.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's absolutely something that we do. And, if they are on a very tight budget, we can focus on the things that need to be done to get that tenant in place. And then we can have that list of things that we want to get done during the tenancy that's not going to interfere with the tenant too much, but it's also going to improve the property. So whether that's upgrading the air cons or installing the dishwasher or whatever. So, definitely can save money that way and get that income coming in with putting a tenant in.
Yeah, and that's actually a good quick little topic to talk about, because we did have a client where this property needed so much done to it, and we were focused on just what has to be done to get advertising photos done and get this property leased out, we'll get this property rented and advertised and marketed, which was like our main point. And there were, I think it was just the paint that was mainly what needed to be done, and something outside, for example. But then the owner was very clear with what the other items they still need doing. We're not saying they don't need doing, but at least we can get photos done, get it advertised, and then we can deal with it. And that actually turned around. I don't know whether you heard the story. It turned around where the owners now said, get everything done. And so now we're like, great, we'll get it all sorted. I think maybe someone spoke to him about it and said, just get it done.
Yeah, well, not just that. You've got to remember, when a property's vacant and an owner's spending money on it, that's what's keeping them up at night. Mm-hmm. So if we can reduce that period and reduce that cost as much as we can, so at least they're not worrying so much about the property being vacant and all the issues that are associated with that, but also that we've managed to keep the cost down, and they've got that sense of, okay, all right, now I can focus and really go forward with what I want to do. But do you find, Ash, that in those cases it's also being able to manage the owner's expectations, because, in their head they're going, oh, but at the end result the property is going to look like this. We're just going to do this little bit, but I want the rent, So that's a conversation to have with them. Go, well, we're not going to be able to achieve that rent just now. Yeah, and managing that.
We had that where we just had to explain that the purpose of doing all the work was to get that better tenant. And so if you're not going to do all the work right now and you're going to do it later, we're still got that concern. And we were just honest, we just said, listen, that is still our concern, that if we don't get it done before advertising, that tenants are going to just go, yep, nah. So Fortunately, it's come around. It was a risk though that we were going to take because it was such a sensitive issue with getting the works done. It was like, okay, if this is the best we can do is just get that paint done, get it marketed, then we'll work with that and still attend to the other stuff. But yeah, it comes down to it is the owner's own property.
That's right. Yeah. That's exactly
they
right.
make the decisions, and I think owners are loving the investment journey. They want to make those decisions. They actually want to be part of renovations and things like that as well. I'm sure you find that.
Absolutely. Yep, for sure. And I just keep them constantly updated with videos and photos and all of that, so they feel like they're not being forgotten about, and I'm just not over here doing everything, and then I'm going to go, okay, we're done, and they're going to be like, oh, well, when did that all happen? So yeah, constantly updating them.
Yeah, excellent. Final question, and do you find you have a problem or an issue with landlords always coming back to you, even though it's all being passed on to a property manager, or are they pretty good these days?
Look, I think I always sort of say to the landlords, if you can't get a hold of your property manager and you've got a burning question, you can always flick me an email or give me a call and I'll help out where I can. So they do know that they can call me, but, you know, I try and stay in my own lane as much as possible. So if I get a call from a landlord, I'm generally going to call the property manager first and just go, such and such has called, you know, is there any issues that I need to be aware of? And they'll go, you know, no, or whatever the situation may be, and then I'll call the owner back. I don't have a problem with speaking to owners. Hopefully they're calling me because they've got another property. You know, that's hopefully why they're calling me. But so I don't think it's an issue. I don't think the PM's mind, and it doesn't happen that often at all. Yeah, well, just every now and then.
I wanted to see what you said, because that's good that it doesn't happen that often, because it does mean that handover process has worked. The property manager is, is meeting up to their expectations, and they don't feel the need to have to call you. So I guess just finishing off this episode, it would be if you are a BDM and you are finding that you are constantly getting, you know, the clients that keep on coming back to you and not the property manager, and it's really hard to sort of sever that relationship, that it would most likely be that the BDM needs to have a better system with handover.
I think in the past 6 months I've probably had 2 owner calls.
Great.
And one was asking about a renovation estimate cost for a patio, and one was, I can't even remember. I think it might have been a pocket dial.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's absolutely nothing serious, which is good.
Yeah, amazing. Fantastic. Well, thank you for coming in, sharing that.
No problems.
We do learn a lot about finding out how other people do things in their office, so it's really lovely to share that. And if you are a BDM and want to sort of share how you do things in the office as well, feel free to reach out and we'll get you on as an episode. I'm always looking for guests, so please reach out if you do. But thank you, Sam, for your time. It's
thank
great
you, Ash.
Finding out a little bit more and sort of doing, you know, a little one-on-one, meeting.
We can tick that box too. We've done our monthly catch-up, Ash.
Absolutely. So excellent. So thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.
Scaling your property management department? The Associates Co. provides fully trained professionals who are ready to hit the ground running. Once a luxury, virtual assistants are now a staple. Whether you're managing 5 properties or 500 plus, find out more at theassociatesco.com.